Hey guys, Tom Barclay here, just outside Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, as you can see behind me. I've just watched them beat Southampton 3-1 in what was a bit of respite for Ange Postecoglou during this difficult period where he's really under the cosh, as we know. But had they not beaten Southampton, it probably would have been ramped up to exponential levels, particularly with the protest before the game, which I'll come on to. It was really a game of a complete banana skin. Not really much upside, but fortunately they got through it from his point of view. 3-1 win, a couple of goals from Brennan Johnson and Mathys Tel, first Premier League goal for him with a penalty, consigning Southampton to relegation, which is probably the bigger picture. From a national point of view, Saints getting relegated, it's basically the least surprising thing of this season, given how bad they've been. But they have gone down here. It's not the first time I've seen a team get relegated here. We had the exact same thing with Burnley last year. Which I remember well when afterwards Vincent Kompany was talking about how this is the start of the next phase of getting them back up, and within a couple of days he was off to Bayern Munich to manage Harry Kane. Ivan Juric here, the Southampton manager, has spoken pretty well about the future. He's not been quite as committed as that, so I would not be surprised if he wasn't there. But anyway, on to Spurs. And then at the end I'll come on to a few other things as well. I have to say, overall, the performance was fine. At least the first half performance was fine. I mean, Southampton are really poor. They're not only a sort of poor, a championship level quality side, but I think they're a poor championship side, or at least not a sort of romping the league kind of championship side. Summed up by the fact that they came up through the playoffs, a bit of a surprise last year, and the recruitment hasn't been great. They've got a lot of good young players. I mean, obviously Tyler Dibling's the big one. A lot of interest from Tottenham from his perspective. Talk of £100 million that Southampton want for him. I would be stunned if they managed to get that. Surely be looking at more like half of that, but he's obviously a good player. And they've got some other good youngsters, but they're just nowhere near good enough. And Juric afterwards talks about them being physically not up to it in the Premier League, not having enough experience, and that sort of showed here. And it was pretty simple for Spurs, barring obviously they conceded late on, which was a bit of a consolation, albeit it was at 2-1. And there was a moment just before they took the lead where Sulemana, who's one of these young players that Juric rates very highly, but just thinks is lacking experience, hits the post, where it sort of deflects off Porro and goes onto the post. And had that gone in, given the sort of potential for toxicity, I guess, in the crowd, that would have been really sort of worrying, quite fascinating, I suppose. It was a weird atmosphere today, I have to say. It wasn't like there was a lot of joy, I guess because beating Southampton, there's not great shakes over it, but given the scenes before the game and the sort of anti-feeling from a lot of fans really with Ange at the moment, it was quite eerie, it was quite quiet, it felt like a bit like a pre-season friendly at times. But within a minute of that goal, or not goal, the hit in the post, Spurs were ahead through a really nice goal actually. We haven't seen enough of Ange ball at all at times this season. Few and far between. I guess that home leg against Alkmaar, we saw a bit of it, but that goal was nice. Lovely ball through from Romero. Maddison plays it wide. I think Maddison was good today. Out wide to Sonny, who has an overlap with Spence, cuts it back, and there's Johnson. And whatever you say about Brennan Johnson, his numbers are good. That was his 10th Premier League goal this season. Yeah, it went on to have his 11th. He's got more than that in all our competitions, and he is a goal threat, as Ange talks about afterwards. He is a goal threat, and there aren't that many of them out there, wingers-wise. Just his consistency and personally his technical ability. I don't think he's technically that great a player. I like him off the bench, but against weaker teams like Southampton at the moment, he's a real threat. It's really on him to try and take it to the next level and prove that he can be a real top player. But he's definitely a real weapon when it comes to playing teams like Southampton, as proved today. I'll look back a little bit quickly, just talk about the protest before the game. So this protest is organised by Change for Tottenham, again, the same organisers behind the protest ahead of the Man United game, which really saw quite an eye-opening march of thousands of people, I'd say, a few thousand, walking down the Tottenham High Road towards the stadium was really made their point. I would say it wasn't quite the same this time round. It wasn't like there was hardly anyone here. There was quite a lot, but it was probably more like around 1,000, I would guess, and that's probably been quite consistent. That's probably maybe even fewer than that, but they made their voices heard. We saw the banners, we saw the scarves. They really made their feelings heard about ENIC, about Daniel Levy. Let's just see where it goes with this. In the game itself, because Spurs sort of end up winning it, and they were not planning to disrupt the game itself, there wasn't really any of that in the game. I think they were supposed to be The plan was to sort of protest in the 24th minute for 24 years of ENIC and the 61st minute for the last time they won the league title, but I didn't really notice a whole lot of that, to be honest. And after the game, because I was just, sometimes I'm here with another colleague where I can have a bit more time to do different things, but I was on my own today, so I had to get straight down to the press conference for Ange, so I didn't actually see anything after the final whistle where there was any more to the protest. So guys, let me know if you were here and you did see anything. Be interested to see that. Anyway, so coming back to the game, obviously score the goal, and then they think they've got a second goal and a first Premier League goal for Lucas Bergvall when he very cleverly sort of hooks back into the net a Romero knockdown header. Romero was a real threat actually today with headers. He was unlucky not to score. A couple of brilliant saves from Aaron Ramsdale, including one that hit him flush in the face. Poor Aaron Ramsdale, who's today, I say poor Aaron Ramsdale, who am I speaking to? Spurs fans here. He's obviously an ex-Arsenal keeper who liked to give it a bit to the Spurs fans when he played against them, so I guess there's no sympathy there. But this is his third relegation in 6 seasons, having gone down with Bournemouth, having gone down with Sheffield United, and now Southampton. Not a good, some unwanted record. That apparently, I was looking it up, the record for an individual player is 5 relegations from the Premier League. 2 players have had that: Nathan Blake, the old Bolton striker, and Herman Hreidarsson, the old Icelandic defender, who himself is even sort of more impressive. That's the word you want to use, because it was 5 different clubs that had happened with Hreidarsson. But anyway, Ramsdale made a couple of really good saves. Actually, he kept the score down, to be honest. He played quite well today. Anyway, Bergvall loops it in, manages to hook it home, off he celebrates. And then we have this sort of farcical moment, actually the second VAR moment of the game, because the opener, Solanke, was kind of in an offside position, but he wasn't interfering with play, but even that took a while for VAR to sort of confirm. But this one goes on for an age, like almost 5 minutes, and this is where Ange, he's gold dust for us journalists, he really is. Like, I know fans, maybe a lot of them sort of have changed their mind, they're not a fan of his, but for us, he's fantastic. He's there on the sideline, he's pretending to flick a coin, he's pretending to do rock, paper, scissors, he's shrugging his shoulders ironically, just all the sort of points about, basically the point seemed to be that it's just pot luck, whatever happens here, when it, in terms of the outcome. And when you're looking at the lines, I mean, the whole clear and obvious argument, I just can't I can't disagree with him. It's just not what it was all about. But that's where we're at now. Took about nearly 5 minutes to eventually a judge, I think it was Romero, to be a Nats wing offside. And offside it is, and the goal was ruled out, and frustration all round. But it didn't take long, to be honest, before they did get their second goal, crucial goal. Johnson, Maddison with a sort of header after the ball had looped up through, and a clever finish from Johnson for his, like I say, 11th Premier League goal of the season. Really good day for him. And then the second half, it just sort of drifted. It felt like, and I was writing, because obviously it was kind of Southampton's sort of demise was one of the main themes of today, albeit not from a national point of view, not really for a Spurs-centric point of view. It felt almost like a training ground exercise. The teams were just playing out time for the rest of the game, but Southampton did then eventually score with a few minutes left with Matheus Fernandes at the far post, and this is something that's cropped up a few times for Spurs, where they're getting caught out the back post, and Jed Spence in particular seems to be caught out quite a lot. I mean, as much as fans love him and he's done brilliantly, I still think defensively there's an issue there on that front. I think we saw it, I mentioned in the press conference when I asked a question about this, I was saying about an Ipswich goal, I think I meant actually the Bournemouth goal when Kirkes sends in that brilliant cross for, I can't remember who scored, but I think Spence got kind of caught napping there, and same here, and Saints scored to sort of add a little bit of drama into this. I don't know, tiny bit of jeopardy, which was extinguished quite quickly afterwards when Johnson got assist by being fouled for a penalty by this sub called Wellington, and then Mathys Tel fires home the penalty. Ramsdale gets a hand to it, but it goes in. Nice story for Tel getting his first Premier League goal. So that was the game. Southampton relegated. Pretty amazing reaction from the Southampton fans by applauding their team off. It was one of those ones where, when the team gets relegated, it's almost customary that the players are like down on the deck or on their haunches, looking out into the far distance, sort of musing over the what's just happened. But there wasn't even any of that, which sums up how expected this all was for them going down. But from from Spurs' perspective, Ange afterwards was saying that basically the first half was good. He felt like he saw them attack and play in a way that they hadn't seen for quite a long time. The second half was way too passive without the ball and way too sloppy with the ball. He said the subs didn't really make much of an impact, and he wasn't really happy with that. Wasn't really happy with the goal they conceded. But ultimately, does it matter? I mean, it's all about the Europa League on Thursday, isn't it? In fact, he even mentioned that he wondered if some of the players had Thursday on their mind as the game sort of drifted towards the end of the game. And I would blame them for it, but I also wouldn't kind of blame them for it in terms of probably quite a natural human instinct to do that, given how little is riding on this game. I mean, look, whoop-de-doo, they moved up to 13th here with this win over arguably the worst team in Premier League history. I mean, bear in mind, Southampton have been relegated the quickest of any team ever in the Premier League. They've got 7 games still to go. Even the Derby team, that awful Derby team that only had 11 points back in 07-08, still had 6 games to go when they got relegated. And Southampton still haven't beaten their haul yet, and wonder if they will. They're on 10 points. They need to get at least another 2 to beat it, or at least another 1 to match it. I don't know. Based on what I saw today, I'm not sure it's going to happen. I mean, let's say it's just all on the Europa League, isn't it? Really. I mean, Ange talked afterwards about Johnson. He kind of was a bit of a talking point. He said that he's a really important player. As I said earlier, he sort of said that there are a few players like him who can score goals in wide positions like he can, and he sort of blamed I was asking about his inconsistency, because that's what he's been this season. He just sort of said, look, to be honest, with all the disruption they've had in the team this season and the struggles they've had, basically everyone's season's been impacted, and I can understand that argument. And he had a bit of a rant about VAR. I kind of tried to get him to be a bit more fun in talking about the flipping the coin and the rock, paper, scissors, because that was quite amusing, but he basically kept it quite dry and just stuck to having a pop at VAR, really, which was good stuff from a journalist's point of view, but nothing we haven't heard before, and also ultimately didn't really matter because they won the game anyway. So yeah, I mean, I don't really feel overall this game really shifted the dial much on if you were like Ange out, which seemed to be a lot of people are. I don't think this would have made much of a difference, this performance or this win, but I don't think whatever had happened, even if they'd won 9-0 like I watched Leicester and James Maddison do against Southampton years ago, I don't think it would have made much of a difference to your opinion. The only thing that's going to make that difference, if at all, is going on to win the Europa League, and that starts with Thursday against Frankfurt. So a good win ahead of that game, but not one that would sort of get you feeling really confident either. But look, it was also a banana skin massively sort of avoided. So they deserve some credit for that, and it's about getting ready for that Frankfurt game, isn't it really? Just finally, a couple of things I wanted to pick up on. One was, you might have seen, I was going to do a video on the embargo section the other day, but sort of ran out of time due to family. But one of the things I wanted to mention, you might have seen this video has gone sort of quite viral, to be honest. It's a little exchange between myself and Ange about, I asked him basically about, on Friday's embargo section, about why he sort of feels the need to engage with fans when they're sort of taunting him from the stands, as we've seen quite a few times, footage of him, whether it be at the home game at Leicester when someone was saying he was taking them down, he reacted there, or specifically at Fulham when he had, as it turns out, 2 young boys sort of taunting him a little bit and him hitting back, off the back obviously of the incident against Chelsea, of his cupping his ear towards the away fans, even though afterwards he denied that was trying to wind the fans up. And his response was just like peak Ange in terms of why journalists and a lot wider fans and people love him, because his response was so authentic. And as a dad, and as I said this in the press conference, I loved his answer as a father in terms of the social good. He said he seemed to say his answer seemed to suggest that he was trying to do by not letting that kind of stuff go. Anyway, he has this answer where he goes on about how it's one thing being criticised and abused from the stands. He's had that for years. I mean, it'd be naive to suggest he hasn't, but it's the difference is someone doing it with a phone, holding it up to your face, and basically the whole point is just to get a reaction. And look, I haven't really had that much myself personally, but it must be a pretty horrible experience, and I sort of respect his answer on it, and it was just brilliantly said. And I think a lot of people who've seen it, even the ones who don't think he's the right manager here, I mean, there are some abusive people, and they can just do one, to be honest. But the ones who are sort of legitimately, and there's a lot of people on this channel who comment, who seem to be kind of wanting him to go, but with a heavy heart, I suppose, or at least in a very analytical, like justified way, which I think is totally fair, obviously totally fair enough. They're sort of saying, yeah, like, we may want him to go, but he's got a fair point here. And I thought it was not a surprise to see it sort of capture the mood and the attention of people beyond just the Spurs fan base, because it was a real sort of captured what is so fantastic about Ange from a sort of human interest point of view, why he's so interesting, why we love writing about him, and why when he goes, whether that's this season or in years to come, and eventually his tenure will end at some point, I just don't, as a journalist, I think it's all downhill really. I mean, it might be a manager who comes in and takes the team to success, and it's obviously been a disastrous season in the league, and the performances could be way better, but there'll be no one who can speak like Ange can on any topic. I mean, you could have this conversation with him. I could ask him a question about Donald Trump. What do you think about Donald Trump? And I'm sure his answer will be absolutely fascinating. And there aren't really many people in football, let alone football managers, who are even close to that. So that was interesting, that moment. But also on a sort of, whilst I'm praising Ange here, I want to sort of pick out a column that Troy Deeney, who writes for us in The Sun, did this week, which kind of contrasting to that, made the case for, even if Ange does win the Europa League, the sensible thing is still to sack him, to part ways in the summer, because he feels like if they did go on to win the Europa League, they'd be in Erik ten Hag territory, where he obviously looked like a dead man walking at Man United, somehow won the FA Cup over Man City, was then kept on, I think signed a new contract, if I'm right, I'm trying to remember now, and then obviously it didn't work, because it never was going to work, and then he was sacked later on, and that he was very much making the case for it. And whilst I don't completely subscribe to that point of view, I definitely have my doubts whether his approach can really work in the Premier League long term. I feel like you just have to dominate the ball too much, have to be on it all the time, have to have a really fit squad, and you have to be the better squad than everybody else. It feels like, at least that's the way it feels to me, having watched all of this for so long. I also feel like Ten Hag's United were just awful, whereas Postecoglou's Spurs, yes, a lot of times have been really poor this season, but they've been so decimated with injuries. Having said that, looking back now, I think United had a lot of injuries as well. Anyway, I found it interesting. I'd seek it out if I were you, if you're interested. I think it's quite an interesting column, quite thought-provoking on that potential scenario. Personally, I think if he goes and wins the Europa League, it's different. United win stuff all the time, albeit not as much as they used to. If you can go and win a European competition, first trophy in 17 years, surely they've got to keep him on. But I found it interesting. It did make me think a bit differently, particularly I always find it interesting hearing ex-players, particularly thoughtful ex-players, talk about football. And I know Deeney can be a bit Marmite at times. Not everyone loves him, but I do think his opinions on football are quite interesting. The way he breaks down the game can be very interesting. And it made me think about it. I'm not saying I completely agree, but I'd be interested to see your thoughts on it. Anyway, I've waffled on long enough. I need to go home now. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on today's game. Feels like a bit of a slight non-event, but let's be honest, it's all about Thursday, and I'll be doing a video ahead of that game, obviously after the presser and after the game itself, and let's see where the next chapter of the Ange story goes from here. Cheers, guys.